Several ordinances and proclamations have been handed down by local governments since the coronavirus outbreak. I sit down one-on-one with attorney David Aylor to talk all things legal for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and download my free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. David Aylor, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's always great to be with you, Quintin.
I appreciate it greatly. Let me just jump into it. Everyone's talking about proclamations, ordinances, stay at home. I want to go to the state newspaper because the headline reads this: South Carolina Governor McMaster orders non-essential businesses to close to fight coronavirus. The state newspaper also says this in another headline: South Carolina Governor closes public beach access, state boat ramps to combat coronavirus. The Charleston Post-Inquiry writes this as a headline: Mount Pleasant Town Council declines to endorse statewide stay-at-home order. Li-Fi News also has a headline that reads this: Mount Pleasant Mayor announces stay-at-home proclamation. When you hear businesses and obviously public beach access is being closed due to the coronavirus, what law book do you pull up right now as a lawyer?
Well, what you're going to look at in this situation is exactly what happened yesterday, which is going to be the executive order put in place by the governor. Now, what we've seen in several different communities, we had Charleston do a stay-at-home order that was done through the mayor's office. You had one done in Columbia. They were just doing one in Greenville, and then other municipalities were looking at it as well. However, the actual order for the entire state has to be done by the governor, and there's always this little back and forth between local municipalities and counties versus the state. No different than the arguments and issues that come up with state versus federal government. But in this situation, it is now clear for everyone throughout the state, due to the executive order, regardless of what any mayor or town council or county council may have decided to do and or not do at this point. It's all under the state realm now, and that comes through the executive order that McMaster put in place yesterday.
And let me go back to the Charleston Post-Inquiry headline. It reads this: Mount Pleasant Town Council, that is, declines to actually endorse this statewide stay-at-home order. And Li-Fi News headline also reads this: Mount Pleasant Mayor announces stay-at-home proclamation. Is that proclamation just pirate rules?
It's not worth essentially it is just that. It's almost sort of like endorsing something or not endorsing something in response to a political vote type of scenario. This is a state executive order, regardless of whether the county council, city council, or a mayor is against it or for it. It really doesn't come into play because it is mandated by the state. So that's going to override whether it be the town of Mount Pleasant or it be Greenville, South Carolina. Doesn't make a difference. It's all within the realm of the state. That's going to override any of the decisions made. So for instance, to give you an example, if there was a beach community, a beach town that said, no, we want to leave our beach open for all people, we want visitors to come, they don't have that right. Once the state puts in place the executive order, and the reason for that is the roads to get to those beach towns are state-owned roads, and those are maintained by the state, and the beaches are funded for the nourishment and everything that comes along with the beach access is done by the state, not by specifically that beach town. As an attorney, what is that rule of law that most of these municipalities should be adhering to right now? Exactly what the governor has put in place, regardless if that's different than what your mayor may have put in place, or there's variations from it. Now, everything that I've read, it's very similar to most states throughout the United States and many other cities. Some just have different time levels. For instance, we just saw yesterday that Virginia put the stay-at-home order in place till June. Right now, we're only for 15 days, starting yesterday, or today rather, and we'll see from there. So I think they'll readdress it at that point. So what is the difference between a proclamation and an ordinance? Well, a proclamation is basically exactly what it sounds like. You're basically making a statement, a public statement. You have proclamations that is a certain person's day, within the State House. There should be Quintin Washington proclamation. Right? What we have right now though is an executive order, and so what that means, it's going to be enforced by the law. So for instance, if you were a shoe store and you were on King Street here in Charleston and you opened up today and you were selling shoes just like it was a normal day, you were violating the law now. no different than when you have curfews in place. Us living here on the coast, we're familiar with some of this type of thing, obviously on much smaller scale periods of time-wise with hurricanes, where they do put a curfew in to protect the safety from looting and things like that. This is no different than that. It's for the protection and the wellness of the people of the state. It's just for a different reason. We're not talking about a storm. We're obviously talking about something that is a lot more unpredictable, unfortunately, compared to a hurricane that may come for several days. We don't know when this is going to end, and that's why you're seeing the states put these orders in place. And you will see enforcement from law enforcement.
Wow. And at this time of emergency, David, who really has the power to enact this type of proclamation? Is it DHEC or the local government?
It's the governor himself. Now, obviously, he is going to work with and has worked with many local leaders, state leaders. You saw a lot of the different legislators, both in the Senate and the House, reach out to the governor, make public statements on Twitter and social media about what they were hoping for. Right. But at the end of the day, the governor who makes this decision, the governor is who puts it in place.
What is legally stopping the governor from ordering a statewide stay-at-home order?
Essentially, that is what he's doing within the degree of what you're going to see from the guideline standpoint from the CDC. They're not going to be able to ever mandate you to physically never leave your house. You're going to have medical needs. You're going to need food and nourishment, exercise and things like that. But what they are going to see and what you're going to continue to see is more enforcement when people are violating these rules, having more than 3 people at their home that are not household members, things like that. Are they going to start, putting search warrants in people's houses, seeing how many people are on the couch? No. Within reason, obviously, but yes, you still are able to travel. There's still several essential businesses. There's a great list, and the good part about that, Quintin, and for everybody watching that feels like their business could be on that list, you can submit and get approved. So if you did not make the initial list of what your profession is and what business you have, you can submit a request in, and then that can be approved, and then you can continue to function with your business during this period of time.
During this period of time. Legally, are there any fines or penalties that will be upon someone?
You have several different things that can happen. I mean, you're talking about, for instance, businesses could lose their business license. The state-issued business license or their city-issued business license. If they were violating the law, for instance, within a restaurant or bar, you could see DHEC getting involved, SLED getting involved, taking their liquor license. So there's several different things to include actual misdemeanors. Now, are you going to go to prison? More likely than not, no. What you would most likely see happen is fines being levied as opposed to the actual jail time, although the jail time is there. But what we've seen so far is a lot of warnings go out. As this progresses, if people start to push and violate the executive order, I think you'll see more than just the warnings. You'll see some actual, enforcement with tickets and arrests even.
And I'm being a little bit redundant, but what constitutional authority does local government have right now?
They're under the mandate of the state government, so they have to follow the state. What you were seeing before was whether or not it was legal for a mayor, or head of a council to put these stay-at-home orders in place while the state had not yet done that. Now, everyone was following it within those city limits, but there was a state constitutional question whether or not that was something that they had legally had the ability to. That's a moot point now because it's throughout the state.
Throughout the state. Any loopholes?
I'm sure there'll always be one to try to find one. But the thing about it is, obviously, we've not been in this position before because often you have where, state of emergency, that sort of thing. It's in certain regions of a state or regions of a country. This is a different scenario, and that's why the governor has to blanket the entire state and not just a certain area that may be more affected than others right now. Because we do know that there's specific areas, specific counties in South Carolina that are being tested with higher numbers at this point. However, as at least the predictions come, it looks like those are going to continue to incline throughout the state and throughout the nation, unfortunately.
Lawsuits. How many will be filed, and what is the common law that people will probably use to file a lawsuit?
Well, there's going to be some issues with some impediment of businesses. For instance, some things that we've heard of so far as when the beach towns here locally and in other parts of the state were closing down state roads, whether or not they had the actual authority to close down the state road as a municipality, considering it as a state road and not a road owned by and maintained by the city. And that issue could come into play for financial losses of businesses, most specifically particularly one that we've heard a lot about is the real estate industry with rentals and things like that, and a lot of money lost based on decisions made by mayors and city councils that may or may not, and I'm not going to be the one to tell you what they had, that's it for a judge to decide, had that actual constitutional power to do that.
And you talk about those, obviously those real estate issues. Let's talk about the short-term ordinances. What are those rules right now, and what should people be looking out for?
Well, anything that, obviously coming into the state is going to do everything that comes within the executive order that Governor McMaster put in as far as quarantine and anything else like that. As far as rentals, there's a lot of people that have rentals short and long term. So you're not going to see a ban of all short-term rentals, because then what do you determine as a short-term rental? 30 days, 60 days, or is it a weekend? We live in this Airbnb world, right? Particularly when you live in the coast area and the other areas of the state that people like to travel and visit. Those still can function within the decisions made by the owners of the home, but the same rules apply whether you are renting the home for a weekend or you've owned the home for 30 years.
Wow. David Aylor, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Always happy to be with you, Quintin. We're supposed to do this.
Oh, yes, sir. For the next 2-3 weeks, I don't know.
Good to see you, buddy.
Likewise.